I just want to start by saying and reiterating the fact that this is part one in a two-part series. So today we're going to be going very much into sort of the technical mechanics of how we're using social media, especially Twitter and Facebook. And then session two is going to be more of the overarching strategy, the thought behind how do we decide how we want to engage with social media, what topics we want to promote, and what are the best ways to do that. So I have the fun of going through like the nitty gritty, and I just want to say in advance that I reached out to many of you to ask sort of what you would like out of this session. And through that, I learned that we have a very wide spectrum of individuals and interests. We have beginners to these platforms who maybe have never tweeted before in their lives. And then I know from seeing some of you in attendance, we have some very active social media users here. So I'm just asking that we grant everybody grace. I tried to accommodate everyone within this sort of orientation workshop to bring beginners a little bit up to speed, as well as to sprinkle helpful tips and tricks throughout so that even those veteran users in our group will hopefully be able to glean something new from the presentation.
Katie?
Yes. Yes? Did Teresa have a question?
I want to exit and come back because something I did with my screen, I can hardly see your
okay,
screen sharing.
And don't worry, I'm going to send everybody the presentation afterwards. And like Teresa said, it'll be recorded as well. So if you miss anything in those couple minutes,
I'm just exiting and coming back.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. So again, no need to take any notes or anything like that. Everything that we go over today, I'll be sending through the presentation. So I want to start by sort of framing why are we even having this conversation? I think there are a plethora of benefits to social media, especially in our advocacy work. It provides an immense free tool that can increase the visibility of our work, increase the reach of our messages. We can use it in a multitude of ways, from raising awareness and promoting, educating our constituencies on certain topics. We can build partnerships and foster new connections. We can promote our events and UN programming as well. We can gather support for action items, whether it's signing petitions or getting signatures for statements. And we can learn and expand our own understanding, as well engage with audiences that we would normally not have any access to. And again, I wanted to mention that in speaking with or being in email communications with many of you, it became abundantly clear that there was a central thread to what everyone was expressing about what they want to know about social media and challenges with social media, and that was related to time. Everyone seems to feel some degree of being overcommitted or stretched thin and not having enough time to dedicate to something like social media. So there are two main ways that I wanted to approach this today. I wanted to look at, first of all, what can you do to amplify the reach and the impact of the little time that you do have to spend on social media, specifically tips and tricks for both Facebook and Twitter, as those are the two platforms that we tend to use the most. And then I also wanted to touch on what mechanisms JCoR has put in place to ease the demand on your time. What are we doing in JCoR communications in terms of making it easier when we're asking you to participate? How can you get the most out of JCoR social media accounts, website, and communications guide to ease the burden on your time? And I do want to mention a lot of the topics that I'm going to be touching on in tips and tricks is going to be through the lens of the platform of Twitter, since that's what most of you asked for. But I will be letting you know when these tips and tricks also can apply to Facebook and how to do that. The how-to guide that I will be sending out does not include step-by-step directions for Facebook, and that's because the interface for that is changing on almost a monthly basis over the course of the past year. So anything that I produce in terms of a how-to for Facebook would probably be outdated rather quickly. But if you have additional questions on that, we can certainly circle back around to that at the end. And again, why are we focusing on Twitter? This is the primary platform that so many of the groups that we want to engage in all come together on. So whether it's UN experts or agencies or NGOs or academics, this seems to be the central gathering space that the most people are utilizing, and it remains a central engagement tool for all of these different groups. So because there are some beginners, I just want to make sure that we're all starting off with the same, at least basic understanding here. There's a couple vocabulary things I wanted to go over very quickly. We need to know what tweeting and retweeting means. So tweeting is basically the message that you are posting onto Twitter. There are messages that are made to be shared and interacted with other people on the platform. And then a retweet is simply the reposting of a tweet. It can be your own or it can be someone else's. The next important vocab word to know is a handle, which is designated by the @ symbol. It's used to denote a username of a particular user or organization on Twitter, and it's unique to each account. And we use these to tag other users or mention other users in our tweets. And I'll touch on that later as to why that's important and how we can use that. And then finally, the hashtag, which is designated by the #. It's a way to connect conversations and help you to find content. It's a keyword or phrase that you can design or pick up on from others that, again, is always preceded by that # symbol. So the basic elements of our tweets that I really want to talk about how we can optimize the use of today are looking at character limits, hashtags, links, tagging and mentions, and of course, retweeting as well. And hopefully doing all these through the lens of what are some time savers and tips and tricks to make this easier for everyone. So first and foremost, it's really important to understand the significance of the character limit on Twitter. Your tweets are limited to only 280 characters. That means only 280 letters, spaces, emojis. All of these things count as characters, or emojis count as 2 characters. And so you are quite limited in terms of how much information you can post there. So throughout the presentation today, we're going to really be talking about how can we maximize the use of that space of 280 characters. One of the creative ways to know how to do this is that images and videos are not counted at all in the character limit. So that's a great way to imbue extra information within a very small allotted space. And we need to be very strategic with the text that we do use. Are we saying, here's a UN document, read it? Or are we saying, here's an exciting new document on a resolution that was just passed at the UN, you can read it, and here's how you can help us? How are we thinking about what words we're using to kind of lure people in and make our information exciting and imbue it with a lot of energy? How are we piquing interest? And this is something that, even though we have almost unlimited characters that we can use on Facebook, it's still something we need to keep in mind, because people are not going to scroll down and read a lot of information. We need to kind of catch people or hook people right from the start. And then I also want to say a really easy way to kind of catch or hook people, if creativity with words is not necessarily your forte, is adding emojis or photos or links, which help make your tweets stand out, capture attention, and increase engagement. And this has been proven effective through lots of research that Twitter has done. So we want to incorporate these elements as much as possible. And as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen here, I picked out a tweet to highlight that I thought was a really creative way to address the limitations of only 280 characters per tweet. And that was, they really wanted to feature this quote, so they put it into an image, because then they can fit all of those words in without having to use up their text limit. So again, I just really want to emphasize creativity is a critical component in how we're approaching, whether it's tweeting on Twitter or whether it's posting on Facebook. And then I want to look at an example of one of our own tweets and sort of how are some of these elements being incorporated and what else do we need to consider? Again, we need to take into consideration the fact that on social media, people are usually scrolling through something really quickly on their phone or scrolling through it on their computer, which means they're really skimming the content before they fully engage with it. So we also want to think about not how much can we cram into 280 characters, but how can we make it readable as well? So even though on Facebook, you're not limited by space, again, a whole block of text is not going to catch someone's attention. You want to make sure that you're incorporating white space as well, so that when people are skimming through, their eyes can easily catch the meaning and they can make that really quick decision as to whether or not they want to stop and linger and look and read a little bit more. And then I also wanted to show how on this tweet, We are using creative language. We're calling people in to help us. We're also including links in this so that people can learn more information. And there's a photo as well. Research shows that if you have a photo or a link or a video, people are upwards of 80% more likely to stop and look, as opposed to if it's just a plain text tweet or Facebook post. So I highly encourage you to use those tools, those additional multimedia items, as much as possible. So what if you're saying, I have a really important message, 280 characters is just not enough. What can I do? I'm frustrated. You can do what's called create a thread. So a thread is where you essentially string several tweets together. And you can do this by when you formulate an original tweet, there will be a plus icon that you can see on the bottom of the screen here enlarged that will highlight as soon as you start to read a tweet or write a tweet. And if you want to create a thread, all you have to do is keep clicking that plus button and it will string your several different tweets together so that anyone who sees that post will see all of that information linked together. So none of it will get lost or taken out of context. But again, this is not something to utilize very often because Twitter and Facebook are not mechanisms where people are looking to read full blog posts. They're not spending a lot of time on it. They want sort of soundbite information. So that is something I would only use on the very rare occasion. The next element that I wanted to address in terms of elemental kind of content of tweets is hashtags. I know that a lot of you are already using them already, and some of you are new. And so I kind of wanted to go through how we can think strategically about how we're going to be using these. And so hashtags are a tool for increasing engagement and reach of your message. They're a fantastic tool to find content related to a given topic. You can search by hashtags on Twitter. So say yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, and I wanted to get involved in the conversation about that. I can search on Twitter for a hashtag about MLK Day, and automatically a Twitter feed is going to be produced just from all kinds of tweets that people have made with that hashtag in it. You can do the same thing on Facebook. So again, it's a way to enter conversations about specific issues. You can also help direct other users to your content about a specific issue. So if you hashtag something, say it's hashtag SDG1, then anybody who's searching for information on Twitter about SDG1 using that hashtag will see your tweet come up in that automatically generated news feed. And this is something where you can certainly hashtag anything that you want. But for most UN related events and for most of our advocacy topics that we work on, there are already hashtags that exist. And so I would encourage you to do a little bit of research before you use a hashtag, because if you pick something really obscure, odds are no one's going to find it. No one's going to end up seeing that. You're not going to increase your visibility by using that hashtag. And I will talk a little bit later about some of the things that JCoR has done to help inform you about what hashtags are important to use at what times. Like I said before, tweets with hashtags increase engagement, clicks, retweets, and replies, all of which bring greater visibility to your profile and can help you gain followers. I do think it's very important to note here, Twitter algorithms are not case sensitive. And by that, I mean, whether you capitalize letters in your hashtag or not, they will all be searched in exactly the same way. So we want to think about how we're using our hashtags in a way that makes it easier for people to read them. So the example I've included here is vaccine equity. You can write it all out in lowercase letters, but as people are skimming, that's not going to register with their mind nearly as easily as if you capitalize the first letter of every single word. And like I said before, whether someone searches vaccine equity with capital letters or with lower cases, all the results are going to show up for both because the Twitter algorithm does not discriminate between the two. So again, anything you can do, because people are skimming these very quickly, to make it easier for them to recognize the point of your message, you want to try and do that. I also want to mention, you don't want to overload your tweet with hashtags. So what happens when you use a hashtag is it becomes highlighted in blue. If almost everything in your tweet is highlighted in that blue color, again, it's hard for people's eyes to skim it. They're not going to be catching the central subject. So you want to be careful about how you use it. Research on Twitter shows that about 2 to 4 hashtags per post is the ideal number. Anything more than that, and it starts to look kind of spammy. Sort of like how much text I put on this page here. It's not something that you could easily scroll through, but because I know this is going to be a take-home item, I can put more text on the page. But please do not do this with your tweets. This is also true for Facebook. Facebook has algorithms where if you're just trying to put as many hashtags as possible on a single post, it actually demotes you in their priority list of when people go to search that hashtag, how far up you show on that list. So it's not just determined by chronology. They also have some more complex algorithms in that. So it's to your benefit to really limit those hashtags so they stand out and people can quickly see what's the main subject that you're trying to get across. And again, one of the time savers that JCoR is producing for you is in our communications guide. We do have suggested hashtags that you can use. So again, you don't have to go searching for what those are. We do have central locations from major events at the UN that we will mail out to all of you and have on our website. Another element to consider for increasing engagement of your social media messages and also expanding people's awareness beyond what you can fit in 280 characters or a short Facebook post is links. It's a great way to provide additional information. They're useful to provide ways to learn more about a topic or an event or an action item. This especially applies to events. It's very hard to put date and time and location and speaker list and topic ideas and registration link, all of this into 280 characters. So you can write a shorter, more engaging message about it, like, I'm super excited for this event, join us to learn more about this, and then put a link where they can go to the page to register and find out more information. Now, just a little tip and trick, sometimes it is necessary to include more than one link, or you might want to include more than one link in a tweet or in a Facebook post. When you do that, the generated link or the highlighted link for which Twitter or Facebook is going to automatically generate an image to go along with your post to be very large and clickable is only going to apply to the last link that you use. So you want to be smart about where you're placing your links within your messages. So for example, if there's an event coming up that I also think it's very important for people to read a UN resolution, for example, that applies to that event. I'm going to have to decide, you can put both links in and they'll be clickable, but which one is going to be featured? Which one is going to be largest and most prominent and have an automatically generated picture to go along with it? Is it more important to have that for the resolution I want people to read? Or is it more important for people to have the registration link for the event? And then I also wanted to touch on, again, we have character limits and links can be incredibly long, hundreds of characters long. So how do Twitter and Facebook deal with this and how can we deal with it in terms of how we're using our social media platforms? So built in on Twitter and on Facebook, they do have their own automatic link shorteners. So on Twitter, in Twitter's case, what it's going to do is it's automatically going to shorten any link that you directly put into a tweet into 23 characters long. The full link is still there, but what's visible is only 23 characters long. Now, when you're at a 280 character limit, that might still be too much. So there are other tools that you can use like bit.ly or other free online websites that you can visit where all you have to do is copy and paste a URL or a website link, and it will give you a shortened version of that link. Now, again, this is something where you as an individual are going to have to decide what strategically makes more sense. Are you really concerned about character count? In which case, go ahead and shorten it even more. But there's also something important to note about when you use the link shorteners that are automatically embedded in Twitter or automatically embedded in Facebook, and why there's a value in using that original link. And that is because Twitter and Facebook have built-in programs, I don't know if that's the right word, but where basically they go ahead and they kind of pre-vet or validate the link that you're using. And so if I'm scrolling through Twitter and I see something from bit.ly, I'm thinking, is this safe to click? I'm not sure. Whereas if it's the URL that's automatically shortened by Twitter or Facebook, which you'll see because you can see the original tweet, it's not preceded by something like bit.ly, you know that's already been verified. And so if it's deemed unsafe, Twitter will bring a pop-up message when you try and click on it. It says, are you sure you want to go here? We may have detected malware on this site. We're not sure. So if you use the longer version that Twitter provides for you or Facebook provides for you, that's about 23 characters long, you are signaling to your users that this is definitely a safe link to click. So it's not a huge issue, but definitely something to consider. And then again, JCoR has created some time savers for you. We've created links for you. So one of the things that JCoR has done is on our webpage, we've very intentionally designed it so that at the bottom of every page, from our About Us page to our home page to our events pages, we have these 3 symbols at the bottom of every page that you see enlarged on the bottom right here. We have the symbol for Facebook, the icon for Twitter, and an icon for email. If you click on any one of these 3, what you're going to see pop up is the image that the arrow is pointing to. So if I'm already logged into Twitter, for example, I can just go to JCoR's page, click on the Twitter icon at the bottom of whatever page that I want to share, and it's going to come up with this pop-up box that automatically enters the title of the page or the event name. It's going to include the link, and then you're also going to see automatically generated image that makes it an even bigger, easier, clickable item to catch people's eye to direct them to our site. You can leave it completely as is, or you can add some of your own text if you would like. This is especially useful for our events. Like I said, a lot of our events have so much information that we want to convey. It's much easier to go to the JCoR website, to just go to the specific event page on the JCoR website and send through or click one of these buttons, and it will automatically then redirect people back to our website where there's a plethora of information on that specific event. One of the other elements that I really want to touch on is mentioning or tagging, which is a tool to bring a tweet or a Facebook post to another person's attention. So it's primarily referred to as tagging when we're using Facebook. When we're using Twitter, it's primarily referred to as mentions, but in some cases can be tagging as well. So if it gets a bit confusing, I apologize. I'm going to try and do the best that I can, but they're basically essentially the same thing. It's by including someone's handle, that @ with a username, in a message, whether that's on Twitter or on Facebook. I use these and would recommend using these for a wide range of uses, such as asking someone a question, thanking someone, highlighting a particular piece of content, attributing credit to someone for a particular accomplishment, or denoting the source of a quote, especially when live tweeting. So for example, mentions using this person @ username can be used for really interesting and exciting engagement opportunities, such as you can reach out to a particular UN mission or agency when there's a specific resolution coming up, and you can say, you know, at US mission to UN, how do you plan on voting on this? This is what we want you to do. Or if you have a particular kind of advocacy campaign message that you're trying to do, and you want to target several different permanent missions to the UN, you can specifically use those mentions to ensure that your tweet is going to show up on the notifications page of whoever is managing that account, so that they will see the message that you're trying to get across. I especially love using mentions to increase visibility when it comes to live tweeting events. I love this because speakers like to talk about what they're doing. So let's say that we have an expert on UN AIDS that's speaking on International Day for the Eradication of HIV and AIDS. And that individual has prepared and is giving a fantastic speech and presentation. They're obviously not live tweeting what they're saying, but everybody else who is in that meeting can do that. We can, in real time, be quoting them, put a mention, a tag or a mention, and then what that's going to do is when they're done giving their presentation, the next time they check Twitter or Facebook, they're going to see that we said that about them. And they're like, fantastic. I couldn't live tweet or Facebook post while I was giving my speech, but someone has done it for me. I'm going to retweet them. In doing that, that's a fantastic way for your message to reach a huge audience that you normally would not have access to at all, or normally would not see your page at all. So I know it's something that is not everybody's favorite thing to do, but it is a really, really great way to grow your audience. And again, I want to highlight, please don't overload your tweets with mentions or tags. You want them to look professional and not really spammy. Again, any mention or tag that you have within the text of a tweet is going to be highlighted in blue. So if almost your entire tweet is highlighted, it's going to be really hard for people to pick out what's important or what specific person you're trying to target or respond to with that message. This doesn't so much apply to Facebook, because in Facebook you can put all of the mentions or tags separately at the bottom so that people don't have to see them with the original message, but it is very true for Twitter. So what can we do if, let's say I, as JCoR, am live tweeting an event and someone makes a comment about climate change that I think is really in alignment with our beliefs on JCoR. I want to share that, but I want to make sure a lot of our JCoR members see it as well. What I can do is I can mention that person using their handle, using their @username within the tweet text, where I'm actually retweeting their, or I'm typing out what quote they said that I really admired. And then what I can do is I can take a picture, and in the picture, I can use that picture to tag up to 10 additional people. And all of those people will then see this tweet within their individualized notifications feed. But anyone else who's reading the tweet will not clearly see who any of those individuals are that were tagged or mentioned. So it's a really good way to add up to 10 additional mentions or tags or handles to your tweets without affecting your 280 character limit at all. And I'm happy to show you how to do that a little later if anybody is unfamiliar with that and would like to be walked through a little bit. And then again, another JCoR time saver that I wanted to highlight. We have gathered a lot of handles for you. Woohoo! So like I said, tags are a really great way to encourage people to engage with the material that we're putting out there. And as JCoR, or some of us are coming from the Run group, a lot of us are really mindful of wanting to support one another in our work. And a great way that we can do that is by tagging or mentioning one another in our posts or in our tweets. And so what JCoR has done is we have compiled a list, a spreadsheet that's available to all of you, that's on our members only page on our website. And it's also linked here for anybody who's not a JCoR member. And it has all of the usernames for Facebook and the handles for Twitter, so that you don't have to go around looking for them. You don't have to kind of guess as you're typing into Twitter or Facebook to try and find someone's. You can literally just copy and paste from this document. I highly encourage you to do this. I know that we have several individuals who work with organizations that are specifically very focused on just a few issues. We all can't cover everything. We're very stretched thin in terms of time. And so let's say that my main focus area is migration, and I know I'm one of the only ones in JCoR that does that. I'm going to try and be really intentional, knowing that my colleagues are happy to share information on my behalf. When I put something on Twitter or on Facebook, I'm going to copy some of my fellow JCoR members in mentions and in tweets, so that they can see my information, know I'm an expert on that, and hopefully retweet it for me and reach a wider audience. Now, for those of you who might be joining us today that are not JCoR members, if you wish to be included in this list, I'm happy to add another heading for our partners, and we can get you included on this so that your information will be shared with others as well. And then again, I just wanted to kind of show a sample of how this has been done. So this is a quote that was taken during last September's opening of the UN General Assembly. The president of Palau was talking about climate change and what we can do to address it. And it was something that really aligned with sort of what JCoR's advocacy sort of focus areas are. And so I wanted to retweet I wanted to tweet what he was saying. So I typed all this up. I used emojis, so it's eye-catching. I went ahead and I added in a few hashtags as well. And I made sure to include the handle or the username in a mention with that @ symbol of the president of Palau. And we ended up actually having great engagement with this specific post because the president retweeted us. So that tweet ended up showing up on the president of Palau's Twitter feed that was shown to all of his followers. So again, just by doing something really simple, like taking the time to put in somebody's handle, can greatly increase the reach of our message. Now, like I said before, I know a lot of you talked about time, and you said, I'm already stretched thin. I don't know how to manage adding another thing to my list like social media. So if you don't have a lot of time to compose your own tweets? Great, you can just retweet somebody else's. That is the joy of platforms like Twitter. Or if we're talking about Facebook, you don't have time to create a post. Great, you can share somebody else's. So retweeting is the act of sharing someone else's tweet or resharing your own. There's also the option to do something called a quote tweet. Research shows that, again, engagement increases if we're more active. So basically, at the very bottom of each tweet on Facebook, you're going to see several options. You can like somebody's tweet. You can reply to somebody's tweet. And there's also this symbol that you see on the left-hand side of the page for retweeting. When you click on that symbol, you're going to get two options that you see directly below there. You can retweet or quote tweet. Quote tweet means that it's going to show up on your page as a tweet, but you get to add your own information to the top of that. So you can add your own comments, you can add additional media, additional links, whatever else you might want to add to that conversation. And I want to encourage you, don't be afraid to retweet yourself. There's a number of reasons to do that. Maybe you're working on a specific justice issue that is going to be an advocacy campaign that lasts years. So your message from a few months ago is still relevant today. Or maybe it has to do with you're trying to reach a global audience. Stats show that 75% of the engagement you're going to get on any Twitter post happens within the first 3 hours of posting it. So if you have a global audience, you might want to retweet the same tweet several times throughout the day to make sure it reaches everybody in your global audience. And again, that takes a matter of seconds, just clicking that retweet button. It's really easy. I do this sometimes for events. I might post a lot of information for an event in a Facebook post or Twitter, and come closer to the event, I might not have time to retype everything. So I will just go ahead and retweet or share something I already have and say, hey, check out below, this is happening soon. Something like that. Again, it's a big time saver. Sources of content that a retweet may come from include other JCoR members pages or other Run members pages on Twitter or on Facebook. You can also search through the hashtags on Twitter. Up in the search bar, you can enter, let's say I'm interested in learning more about the global goals. We're in the midst of the HLPF and I want to get involved in that conversation, but I don't have time to write my own tweet. I can just go and search in that main search box on Twitter or Facebook, put in a hashtag global goals, and automatically it comes up with all the top posts on that topic that are getting the most engagement, as well as all the latest posts, the most recent posts. And I can scroll through those to retweet someone else's content instead of having to write my own from scratch. Retweets are also really important because often it becomes reciprocal. Retweeting someone else's content will show up on their private notifications feed. So let's say I retweet Teresa. She's going to get a notification on her Twitter account, or if I share something on Facebook, she'll get a notification on her Facebook account if I reshare one of her posts. And she's going to say, oh, look, Katie has picked up on something I said. I wonder who Katie is. Let's click on this and let's find out. She might then go visit one of my profile pages, learn more about who I am. She may find something from my tweets or my Facebook posts that she wants to share with the world, or she may start following me. So retweets are really, really easy, not time consuming, and can really ramp up your engagement and gain additional followers. And keep in mind, we don't have to be experts on everything. I think a lot of us have our specific topic areas that we're very good at, that are kind of our fortes. Lean into that. Like, for example, I know that Unanima International does a lot of work on homelessness. So if it's an International Day to End Homelessness, or if I know there's a resolution at the UN that was voted on recently, I can go straight to Unanima's page and find out what I can retweet from that page. I don't have to come up with my own. So don't be shy about using your colleagues' expertise. And I also want to mention the importance of pinning tweets. Like I said before, about 75% of the views and engagement you're going to get with a tweet happen within the first 3 hours of posting it. And sometimes we have information that's so important, we don't want it to disappear kind of in people's news feeds that quickly. So what you can do is you can click on the more icon on the top right of any tweet that you have. And you can also do this on Facebook. And you can select that you want to pin it to your profile. What this does is it puts your tweet or your Facebook post right up at the top of your page, right under your main profile info. And it stays there until you unpin it. So for example, right now on the JCoR page, I have our intro video because I want anybody who comes to our profile page to immediately be able to have access to more engaging information about who we are. When they say, who's this person, but they retweeted me, I want to know who they are. It's right there at the top of the page. It might also be something where there's a really important advocacy campaign going on. And you want a message to stay there for the entirety of that advocacy campaign. That's a great reason to pin a tweet as well. Again, only takes a couple seconds, doesn't require generating anything new, but keeps content fresh in people's minds. And also, given that a lot of us have global audiences, this ensures that no matter what time of day someone is logging in and checking out your account, they see what information you want to prioritize right at the top of your page. And finally, the last thing that I kind of wanted to talk about in terms of how we can better utilize our time on Twitter is lists. Now, this is not a main element of a tweet. It doesn't appear in a tweet, but it was something that, in reviewing a lot of those of you here who do have Twitter accounts, I noticed that not a lot of us are using these, and they are an extremely helpful time-saving tool. So I did want to take a little bit of time to talk about it, and we'll run through how to create one as well together if we have time at the end. So lists are a really easy trick to find relevant content that's worth retweeting. It's basically a curated group of Twitter accounts, and you can create your own, or you can follow other people's. So basically, when you log on to Twitter and you look at your news feed, there's a lot of clutter on there. There's ads, there's suggested people you might want to follow, there's suggested tweets that might be of interest to you, and then there's tweets from the people you actually follow. So a list is a way to weed out all of that clutter and to say, I only want to see directly what certain people or certain groups or organizations are posting. So in that sense, it's a huge time saver, especially if you're a person who's like, I'm still a little bit like intimidated by having to post and create my own tweets and things like that. I'd rather start out more slowly just by retweeting other people's content. This is a really easy way to hone in on very specific topics or very specific groups that you want to keep an eye on in order to retweet their information. So again, you can follow other people's lists. This is something where if you go to someone's profile on Twitter and you click on the More button, it will come up with a prompt where it says view lists, and you can see all the lists that individual has created if they're public, and you can just click and follow whatever ones you might want. So let's say you're particularly interested in women's rights. You might have someone who's created a list that's looking at just UN organizations focusing on women's rights and their affiliated NGOs or something. A list can be created for any topic that you would want. And then, of course, you can also create your own. And I can show you how to do that at the end of our time here. And I do want to mention this, and again, I'll show it to you later. JCoR, we have started composing a lot of these lists for you. So for example, we have a list that's just all JCoR members. So any of you that are JCoR members, I highly recommend you go onto Twitter and you add this list. So it's an easy way that you can just quickly scroll through and you'll only see tweets from our members that you can easily retweet and support one another. I also have categories on there. For example, all of the permanent missions to the UN that have Twitter accounts. Those are all under one list, so you can easily access those. So I highly recommend you check that out. So you don't have to spend time creating your own. You can just pick up on ones that we've already created for you. If there's ones you don't have time to create, but you'd like to see created, please feel free to say so. I'm happy to do that as well. And if you're still like, I don't know what to tweet, I'm still feeling overwhelmed by this, or maybe you're just during a really busy time like a conference, you're like, I don't have time to do this. Please do check out JCoR communications guides. We are starting to produce these more often and putting them out farther in advance. And these all have, for major UN events and programs, they've all got suggested tweets, pages of them, as well as suggested handles and suggested hashtags for you. So it's, if you want to become kind of more active on social media, all you have to do is literally copy and paste from those suggested communications guides. And on that note, we will have one coming out in just another day or so for the upcoming Commission for Social Development. Excuse me. And finally, I know, again, time is a factor. One of the tools that I'm not sure how many of you use is scheduling. And you can do scheduling on Twitter or on Facebook. So basically it's a way to compose a tweet or a post well in advance of when you actually want it to go out. And you can do this for a number of different motivations or reasons. So sometimes it might be, I know I'm really active at the Commission on the Status of Women. I'm running from meeting to meeting or Zoom call to Zoom call. I don't have time for social media. Well, in a week or two leading up to that event, you can go ahead and schedule tweets in advance so that your social media accounts still look like you're active during that time. You can still get engagement, you can still gain followers, but it doesn't require any input on the day of whatsoever. You can choose when it's convenient in your schedule. It's also important for some of us who have these global audiences in terms of thinking about when do we want our tweets to reach the intended audience, given that kind of 3-hour time frame. So, for example, if I have a lot of constituents in Australia, well, it's convenient for me to post things, in the morning here or in New York, 8 or 9 a.m., but that's already 8 or 9 p.m. at night, their time. So if I really wanted to get it viewed, you're much better off scheduling it in advance. Schedule your tweet or your Facebook post to be released at a time that's actually convenient and likely to be read by your audience. So again, a tool, it does take a little bit of time, but it's very flexible around your schedule. And finally, if you only have time to do one thing, let's say you can't do anything else, you are so stretched thin, please just check your notifications. It's that simple. When you log on to Twitter or when you log on to Facebook, click on the notifications button in the menu. JCoR is consistently striving to tag and mention as many of you as we can in all of our posts and tweets about important upcoming events, action alerts, advocacy campaigns, all of those types of things. So at least a couple times a week, you should be getting JCoR posts that are popping up on your notifications page right there at the top for you to see. All you have to do is click retweet or share. So those are kind of the main things that I wanted to touch on today, and the tips and tricks, and also let you know what JCoR is doing to help ease the burden on your time constraints. I'd like to open it up for questions. If you want me to go through and demonstrate in real time how to do any of these things or show you where lists are at and what we created, I'm happy to do that. I also want to open up the floor, as a lot of you are experienced social media users. If there's any tips or tricks that you have that you want to share, I would love to open up the space right now for people to be able to do that.
Katie, we do have a question from Dusty, who was interested in the use of the social media icons, which you were demonstrating are on all the pages of the JCoR website. And she wanted to know more about, how one links icons like that to their own content, whether it's a web page or can that be linked to a document, something like that. Dusty, please expand upon that or clarify it if I didn't capture your question correctly.
Great job. Thank you.
So Dusty, are you asking you'd like to put those buttons on your own web page?
Yes, or on documents that I want to send out, that I tweet out, how can I put those icons, on something I create?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
I know how to do what you create and then click on them, but I don't know how to do that for my own documents.
Yeah, so the way that I have done it specifically works just through websites, not through documents.
Okay.
And that's something that if you want to learn how to do that, it's really easy through several of these different website building platforms that I assume the Dominican Leadership Conference is on one of them as well, such as WordPress or Wix or Square. I'd be happy to set up a private Zoom call with you at some time, and we can do a share screen and we can set those up on your website together. And once you do it, it should be really easy to replicate across any pages that you want, at least if it's a web-based platform.
Thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Katie. And Paul also has a question. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Katie, for wonderful explanations. I think I must to learn about technical things, how to use that. One issue I think you don't mention in your presentation about security issue of using social media, how to handle or how to to address or to filter our social media account personally or organizationally.
And just to clarify, are you asking about in terms of security of putting certain messages out there on your account, or are you talking about the security of your account specifically? Does that make sense?
Yeah, in terms of content,
Okay.
Whether we want them to receive contents like that, or something like that. So
yeah. So there is a way that JCoR is working to address this. And then I also am really glad that you raised that point, because I think that's a fantastic topic to expand upon in our part 2, looking at strategy of using social media and how we decide what topics we're going to be addressing through social media and what we're not. So I'll table part of that for our next part 2 kind of training session. But the part that I can address today is, number 1, we have our colleagues. And so if there's something that in specific locations and for specific individuals, it feels like this message is not safe to share, but maybe it's safe for somebody else to share, definitely reach out to your colleagues and ask them if they can help promote messaging for you, if it's safer for them to do so than it is for you. We also work through JCoR's global community hours. We are taking notes on what everybody says about sort of what are advocacy emerging issues or advocacy concerns in their area. And then when we're developing our JCoR communications guides, whether that's for CSOC-D or CSW or the HLPF or any of these other major events, I'm going back and I'm reaching out to individuals who have raised specific issues to say, we'd like to include some social media messaging suggestions in our JCoR guide to send out to everybody kind of on our listserv. Would you like to contribute messaging to that? So for example, with the Commission on the Status of Women, I'm going to be reaching out to people who have specifically raised women's issues and say, I thought what you brought up was really important. Can we craft a social media message about this that I can share with the rest of our group? It then gives our members and constituents a chance to say, oh yes, I can't tweet this, it's not safe for me, but can you tweet this on our behalf as a platform with a stronger voice? Or it's also an opportunity for them to say, you know, this really isn't safe for us to share right now. We'd prefer you not say anything. And we, of course, will honor that as well. So that's how we're addressing it now, but I'll definitely see if we can have a little bit more concerted time spent on that in our part 2 of this workshop.
And Teresa Cotron has a comment or question. Go ahead, Teresa. You're on mute, Teresa.
You're muted, Teresa.
Still not hearing you.
All right. Thank you, Katie, for this wonderful session. Very, very good to learn the tips and skills. After listening to you, I feel I have a long way to go to learn. The tweet that you mentioned, how you do, put in the handles separately, that would be something I would like to learn, so that, the tweet looks more professional rather than, scattered, messy. By adding so many Twitter handles, how to create those clips so that we can post.
I think we have just enough time. We can do one little demonstration. If we can't get to, if some people want more, like I want to actually see your screen as you work through and do these things, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to set up individual Zoom calls and do screen shares with you. We just simply don't have enough time today, but that's what I'm here for. So definitely reach out.
Thank you.
And I love, Teresa, that you said you learned something from this, because you're someone who is already very active on social media. And I'm really appreciative of all your efforts.
For a month, I haven't touched, because once I went home, it was not just possible. And then you are back. It takes a lot of time to think the words we use, so that it doesn't generate negativity, that it creates a positive energy around, and to find the hashtags. So it's time consuming.
Yes, it definitely is. And let me share my screen here really quickly, and I can walk through that tagging and mentioning. Are you all seeing the JCoR Twitter page now?
Yes, we do.
Yes, yeah.
Perfect. So let's say we want to generate a new tweet. Let's see, we're going to click the button over here. And we're just going to put test tweet in here for now. And in order to tag additional people without it directly showing up, so I could do at JCoR 2030. Of course, it would not be common to mention yourself, but I'm just using that example right now. So you see how it's highlighted. When you properly mention someone, that's how it's going to show up. Now, we also want to try and make this engaging. So let's add a photo. This is how we're going to tag extra people. I'm just going to grab something from my desktop. Happens to be a migration photo. Let's see if I can get this to work. Okay, so we've automatically got a picture. Now, if you see just below the picture now, something pops up called tag people. So if I click on that button now, I can tag, oh, look at this. I've got Loretto, I've got Unanima, I've got lots of groups here. And like you're going to see the ones that you've already added up here at the top. You can add up to 10 additional tags or mentions or users here. When you're all done, you're going to click done. And then now all you're going to see is a little bit of text below the picture that shows who you've tagged, but the majority of people aren't even going to notice that in your text. So once I press this tweet button down here, the tweet is going to show up on my page, but it's also going to show up on the notifications feed of everybody else that I tagged in that photo. So that's a great trick to use. And while we have just a minute left, I do want to show just really quickly some of these lists for people. So again, lists are a really quick way to find like-minded people on an issue or to find issues to retweet about very quickly. So if you click on the list button on your left-hand menu, you will go to a page that basically lists all of your lists. Or at the very top here, you're going to have the option to create your own list. So I just want to show you, we've already created several for you. There's the JCoR member list, which is going to have all the JCoR members in it. So if I click on that, all I'm going to see is tweets. Oh, that's a lovely one right there. Thanks, Loretto's. That's all I'm going to see on that list are just people from JCoR posting. And I can also go back and show you. So we've also got, for example, like on International Days and International Days of Remembrance, I might want to tweet out the general message that the UN is saying about that event, but I want to do it in several languages because we have different members from around the globe that might want to be able to read that. I can easily go to this group here, official UN by different languages, and it takes me to a list that's just the official UN accounts in its, I think, 8 different languages that are available. This is a list that JCoR follows that somebody else created that's specifically on interfaith climate issues. So again, we do a mix of both creating our own and of using other people's. So I highly, highly recommend take advantage of those lists. I'm happy to create more if you want more and you will find it useful. And I'm exactly at 10 o'clock now. I want to respect some people have another meeting to go to. So if there's other questions, I'll linger around. But I also don't want to hold anyone longer than needed.
I just wanted to say one thing. It depends what device you use for your tweets. The laptop or computer has much more, the whistles and, all those things. But phone has much less.
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up. The how-to guide that we use today, that I talked through today, is obviously desktop-based. But I will be sure when I send it out, there's fabulous tutorials on YouTube that are about 10 or 15 minutes long that will show you how to do it on an iPad or a tablet or on your phone. So I will be sure to link those so that you can see how some of these specific things play out using different interfaces.
Thank you.
Different devices. Thanks, Teresa.
Daniel, was there something? Well, we'll just pause for one moment and just say, to anybody that needs to leave and head to CSOC debriefing, thanks so much for being here and for making yourselves available to receive Katie's shower of social media wisdom and little tricks.
A big thank you.
Everybody hopefully picked up on at least one new thing today, or if not, got a refresher on some things that maybe got some cobwebs on them. in the last several months. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll stay on a few more minutes if there are other questions from those who have time to linger.
Bye.
And thank you for everyone for joining and sitting through the technicalities of all this. I know it is not the most exciting to go through the kind of mechanisms of how this all works, but it's so important and I really appreciate it.
Nice job, Katie. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. I'll probably get in touch because I need more help.
Wonderful. I look forward to it.
I'll be in a beginner's group.
Bye now.
So much.
Yeah, great graphics, Katie. Nice presentation. I have a quick Twitter question if you have time.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of rule or norm or anything about how long a pinned tweet stays up? Like, can we just do it? Like, if I wanted to do something, maybe we could create one advertising that we're co-sponsoring a virtual exhibit booth at CSW 66 and just leave it up for 2 months. And then we take it down because in April, it's going to be something else. Or are these meant to be things that are kind of perennial?
So I'm not technically an expert, like, so some of this I kind of just do feel out on my own as well. So feel free to do the same. I think it completely depends upon the content. If you're worried that someone's going to come to your page and think, ooh, that looks dated, because they can see the date on it, then it's probably time to change. However, like with the JCoR page, our intro video is always going to be important and a great resource for people who are first-time visitors to our page. So I don't mind leaving that up even as the date gets older. If you're really worried about that, just create a new post. I think for events that you're advertising, like what you said, it's perfectly fine to keep it pinned up there for 2 months because people are easily going to be able to see, okay, this tweet is like 2 months old, but the event is happening this week. It hasn't happened yet. So I think it's kind of a matter of using your common sense. The only thing that I think gets a little bit more time specific would be if we're advocating for very specific items like resolutions or voting on a specific topic, then obviously you're going to want to make sure you don't keep that posted well beyond the date at which the vote or the resolution discussion took place. Does that help at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Very informative, great training, thanks.
If I can just tack onto that to say you have complete control over how long it stays. So there's no kind of automatic limitation. You pin it when you want, you unpin it when you want, and it's all done manually.
Yeah, I just discovered that in the past year, although I didn't know about lists. So thank you very much.
Right.
And thank you for all the groundwork you've done for us that's on the JCoR website. Those will indeed be game changers for us.
And still open to suggestions. So if anybody else has more ideas for improvement, come talk to me or send me an email anytime.
This
Thank you. It was a good learning and hope to learn more.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this might be a topic for the second training, which, by the way, when will that be? Do we know yet?
To be
Teresa,
announced.
do we know yet? Okay.
Okay, good. I haven't missed it. So I was on a call the other week with some friends who, you know, are very aware of that a lot of people don't like Facebook because of who owns it and, you know, there are issues. And I guess Twitter and WhatsApp are both owned by the same company.
WhatsApp is owned by Facebook.
Yeah.
Twitter
Okay.
is separate.
Twitter is separate. So, well, this woman, she's doing some kind of social media class right now. And she said there are over 1 billion users on TikTok. And I did note that the UN now has its own TikTok account. So just to raise the question, I'm not asking for yet another thing of social media in my life, but I did have an intern this past summer. She was wanting to create a TikTok account for us. And I said, but just, I'm assuming that y'all have that on your radar screen and will advise us if at any point it makes sense for us all to create TikTok.
And I think Instagram as well, but again, that's owned by Facebook. I do know that Twitter had in beta testing last year, which is kind of like, we've created a new mechanism and we're testing it. It's not the final version yet. There's still some kinks to work out. They had a lot of different mechanisms to mimic what's on TikTok, what's in Reels, what's on Facebook, because they recognize a lot of people are getting sick of Facebook and who it's owned by, and they're switching over. So Twitter is trying to say, we can do everything here. So I think longevity wise, there's a lot of potential there. TikTok and Instagram are definitely on our radar, but I also think continuity is really important. So it's a question of, since we already are all so stretched on time, if we have an intern that comes through and wants to create it, that's great. But what happens if you get followers and then you don't post on it at all for a year? What does that say or reflect about you as an organization? So there's a lot to think about. But if it became something really prominent that I thought, this is where the messaging is at, this is where the people are at, I would definitely, and Teresa, I think would as well, we'd say something and bring it up.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks for
I
all your
have
time
one
today.
question, Katie,
Mhm.
regarding copyright. Because I have an experience. We posted one video, and then somebody else found it in another account, and they even how do you call this? Uploaded it on their own YouTube account, and then posted it on their own Facebook account. How do you deal with this? Thanks. It's our own video, which I posted on our Facebook. We produced that video and all that. And then somebody else took it from our Facebook and even uploaded it in their own YouTube and then posted it on their Facebook. How do you deal with?
So
Such
I think
case.
that's a multifaceted question. Did they use it in a way that you didn't like? Did they forget to attribute it to you? Did they not give you any credit? That's a problem. And perhaps that's something that we can bring up and address in our next session. There are some ways that you can prevent that type of sharing of YouTube videos from the start. So there is a way that you can set, when you put something on your YouTube channel, you can set it to private so that only people that you send the link directly to will be able to access it. So if there is something for safety or security reasons that you do not want other people sharing, you can definitely do that. But I don't have a lot of experience with the sort of copyright question. So that's something I definitely will try and look into before our next session. And in terms of using photo content and things like that, I do try and make sure whenever we're putting things on Twitter, I'm either attributing it to the original source so that we don't have copyright issues, or I'm using open stock images so that they're free for everybody to use. You won't get into any kind of copyright trouble with it.
Or is there a way preventing people from downloading a video?
I don't know. Teresa, do you know?
Because it's not a YouTube link. It's a video that has been uploaded. It's actually on Facebook. Because on Facebook, you have a choice, no? Upload a video or put a link to a YouTube video.
I know if you have a video file on your computer or another device that you want to share publicly, if you upload it to YouTube, there's no way, nobody can download it from YouTube to their device. I'm not sure about Facebook, but so I would have to look into videos on Facebook to see if there's, I didn't think there was a way you could download videos from Facebook, but maybe you can.
I think you can, just like photos. So maybe there's an
okay.
option when you're uploading it to unclick so that people can't share it.
Right.
I don't know.
But the one, at least one obvious tip that we could share in that regard then is, instead of uploading your video to Facebook, I don't know if you already have a YouTube channel, but it's extremely easy to have one. Anyone with a Gmail account can easily upload a video to YouTube. And if you upload it there, then it's it's locked in as your content. And if someone wanted to share it, they could, but it would just be a link back to your page where you have presented it. They couldn't download it to their device and then upload it to their own, site or social page as though it were their own. So that's at least one workaround we know for sure, is if you put it up on YouTube first instead of Facebook. That's one protection that you could afford yourself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks you both for
Thanks,
being
y'all.
here. We'll see
Yeah.
you.
Lisa, do you
Y'all
have just a
later.
minute to stay on?
Nicely done, y'all. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.